this is a final round. So, is everyone ready to make this happen? Cool. Well, I'd just like to start off by saying I love speech and debate. Like, this has taken up 7 years of my life, and this is the first Nationals final round that I've been in. And this activity is truly, truly empowering and has changed my life. And so I'm so grateful that you are here to experience this and experience the transformation that can happen to two individuals through activities such as this. So thank you for that. I want to set my priorities straight up front. I am a very strong Christian, and I am so thankful that I get the opportunity to provide advocacy to you that I believe is in alignment with what my beliefs are. And my hope for this round is that this is a reflection that brings glory to the God that I serve, and that doesn't detract from it, and that I am so grateful I get to share that with all of you today. I want to thank my family. My parents have never watched me debate before, except for recordings after the fact. So this is huge, but they deal with my shenanigans, my car breakdowns on the side of the road on the way to tournaments and other such things. So I'm appreciative for them. I want to thank my team. I mean, you guys are the best. Ben, thank you so much for being my partner throughout all of this. And Brett as well. He doesn't watch rounds, but truthfully, I've become a much better debater because of him. And then finally, I want to thank the IPDA. I love this activity, this type of debate specifically, and the way that they empower voices. And so I'm so grateful that I get to partake in this. But with that out of the way, is everyone ready to start this round? Cool. Then let's go ahead and begin. Since my first time speaking today, I'd just like to say thank you once again. Thank you to our judges. We couldn't do this activity without you. I really appreciate it. And thank you and congratulations to Lindsey. We've debated a few times before and see each other all the time in circuits, so I'm excited that this is who I get to do the final round with. I could not be more proud today to stand in affirmation of the resolution which states, "It is time for America to embrace the 4-day school week." As the child of two educators who have seen the impact that burnout, a teacher shortage has not only on those participating in our education system, both on the teacher and student level, but the impact that it has on the future of our nation and countries all around the world, I am so proud to affirm today's resolution. Education and activities like speech and debate are how we empower world change. This resolution matters. My advocacy today matters. My definitions for today's round so that we can navigate this cleanly. It is time refers to an appropriate action. It is appropriate to do this today. America refers to the states that exist in America. Embrace means to avail oneself, and in this case it means make it such that state laws allow for 4-day school weeks. And a 4-day school week is, of course, K through 12 education schedule that only has 4 days. Our weighing mechanism today is going to be net benefits. If by the end of this round, judges, I've convinced you it is more beneficial than it is harmful to the education of our students, the participation of teachers in our systems, and our school and education system as a whole, then you can feel very comfortable voting for me. But let me set the scene before I get into my 3 contentions. Currently, we only have 12 states in the United States that allow for a 4-day school week. But the Northwestern Education Association in 2025 says even in spite of that, we've seen 500 schools over the past 2 years switch to a 4-day school week. What's that about? My first contention, better for students. This system is unequivocally better for students. Subpoint A, academic achievement. The Economics of Education Review Journal in 2024 published a study from Oregon State University where they tell us that 1,600 rural school districts across 24 states that implemented this policy saw consistent growth and gains in student academic achievement. A study from Georgia State University and Montana State in 2015 quantified this for us, telling us that the increase in math scores on standardized tests goes up 7.4%, and for reading, it goes up 3%. Our students do better when they only have to go to school for 4 days. But why does this happen? Subpoint B, bullying. Emily Morton, who is a Stanford PhD student and researcher in their Center for Education Policy Analysis, published a study in 2021 that says if you look at the districts in Oklahoma that have implemented this policy, they've seen bullying go down by 39% and fighting in their schools go down by 31%. When you're able to focus on what is going on in your classrooms and not whether or not you're going to get slugged upside the head when you step your foot outside the door or otherwise slandered for who you are, you can learn better, and that's a clear benefit. Subpoint C is desire. Education Week explains in October of 2021 that 69% of parents and 85% of students prefer a 4-day school week. The RAND Corporation in 2021 tells us in school districts that have implemented this, 84% of families want to keep the system and 95% of students. We like this because of its benefits. But subpoint D is mental health and attendance. The Economist in 2026 explains to us, because of all of these benefits, the long-term mental health, attendance, and behavior of students gets better. We see our students get better. That's a net benefit. This second contention today is better for teachers. I really care about this one. I can tell you for a fact, from the cuts that the Department of Education has currently been levying on school districts, rural districts are getting railed, and it's problematic. This is bad for teachers and their mental health. Prodigy in 2025 tells us that 89% of teachers report experiencing burnout The reason this matters, and the reason my advocacy today matters, is because according to Dallas Life School in 2025, when Texas implemented this, 71% of teachers reported decreased levels of burnout, and 40% reported immediate increases to their mental health. Our teachers do better in this system. They can better serve our students. The third contention today, better for districts. This happens twofold. First, in recruitment of teachers. St. Louis University in 2025 published a study where they found that school districts who switch to a 4-day work week are able to fill vacancies faster because recruitment goes up, because teachers like this system. The impact of this is that it addresses the unfilled positions that we see in the status quo. The National Center for Education in 2024 tells us that there are 3.2 million unfilled positions in the United States for educators. Based off of all of this, you should feel comfortable voting for the affirmative.
I have 2 minutes on the clock for cross-examination. Evan, if you're ready.
I'm ready.
Awesome. And I'm not entirely sure where all my judges are, but if anyone is, okay. All ready? All right. I'm going to go ahead and start those 2 minutes right now. Great speech. Of course, I do have some questions.
Yep.
So my first question is going to be aimed at your first contention, subpoint A, talking about this OSU study.
Yep.
So this was in rural implementation, correct?
Right, so the Oregon State one was specifically looking at rural school districts. The Georgia State one, though, was not. It was looking at all school districts in Colorado specifically.
Okay, and then do you think that most students are in rural or suburban areas?
I would guess rural.
Okay.
I would guess rural. The majority of Americans
Okay.
live in rural America. Even if that's not true, it doesn't really matter. You see the benefits regardless.
Okay, and then subpoint C, looking at the desire. You talked about this study saying 69% of parents and 84% of students prefer this.
Yep.
Where was this study done specifically?
This Education Week was specifically an online poll, so individuals choose to participate in this. The RAND Corporation one was looking at districts that have implemented this. Again, self-selection, but
okay. So the people who can participate in this, do we know that they actually lived it then? Like, did they actually
that's why I give you
experience?
2 different studies. Regardless of whether or not they're participating in it, they approve of it by and large.
Okay, and then the parents who were the ones that were responding to this, are they parents of children who rely on school lunches or school for daycare?
It's just families across the board, but I didn't get to it, but there's good evidence that this actually improves resources for those programs through cost savings.
Okay, and then just so we're really clear, when we're looking at a 4-day schedule, we're basically saying that they're going to have school for 4 days and then they're going to have a 3-day weekend.
Not necessarily. A lot of school districts who implement this do Monday, Tuesday, break on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, break Saturday, Sunday.
Okay, but they only we're not doing like 1 day online. It's only 4 days of actual school specifically. Yes. Okay, cool. And then when we're looking furthermore, talking about this idea of better for teachers, would you agree that if this was something that was probably helping teachers, we'd maybe see an increase in recruitment or retainment of teachers from it?
Yes.
Okay, have we?
Yes.
What's your source on that?
I gave you 2 different sources. First,
on increase in recruitment.
Yeah, that literally was in my third contention. St. Louis University, vacancies for teachers fill faster because recruitment gets better.
Thank you. All right. So I guess I also get to do an all-timer thank you. this is my first individual time in a national final, so I'm also really grateful for that. I'm really grateful for my current team. I switched teams this year. I was really scared. Went from a team with like 3 people to a team with 30. That's terrifying. But I absolutely love all of my team, and I love all the support that they gave me. I mean, people running around to give me stickies, all the help I've had throughout this entire tournament. I would actually definitely not be here in this final round if it wasn't for the help from my team, from my coaches, as well as from my friends from other schools, University of Arkansas, as well as LTU. I've had so much support, and I felt so loved. I also do want to thank, of course, my family. My mom has come to a couple of tournaments. Unfortunately, she couldn't come to this one. My mom is my #1 supporter in like literally everything. I've quoted her, not quoted her, but referenced her, and I think probably 4 rounds at least this weekend. I bring her up all the time. She's my favorite person ever. But I also do want to thank my old debate team as well. I don't know if they're in here, but I am from BIPSI, and I really would not be where I am today without learning from my old coaches, as well as especially my old TIPTA partner, Jackson Choma. I'm pretty sure a lot of y'all know who he is. He's a really great kid, and I love him. And I also want to thank, obviously, my judges. I know it's not always necessarily the most exciting to sit and write a ton of notes and have to make all these hard decisions on who wins and loses these rounds. But I know everyone in this room can say we do appreciate y'all being willing to do that, because we cannot have this activity without you. And I also do want to thank my opponent, Evan. I think this is maybe our second, third time debating actually an individual, and I'm really excited to be able to do that in such a large scale and such a great opportunity. Just really overall thankful. And thank you to everyone that's watching, because having a crowd, while it makes me very, very nervous, it's also really cool to be able to speak in front of this many people. I think this is the largest amount of people I've ever debated in front of in my life. So with that, I have a 6-minute timer that I'm gonna go ahead and start right now. What I'm gonna do in this speech is ultimately negate the resolution that it is time for America to embrace the 4-day school week, by first going over some resolution analysis, applying some burdens on my opponent, as they are the affirmation. They do have the burden of proof in today's round. In order to prove this resolution to be true, they ultimately must first prove these burdens. Before I actually move first into my case, and a lot of this is going to cross-apply as well to my opponent's case. So let's look first at these burdens. And the #1 burden is that they have to show that it is time right now, right? Today, it is time today. They have to show uniqueness of doing it right now. But the second burden is that they have to show that the benefits that they are potentially talking about are directly linked to a 4-day school week. And they also have to show on top of that that the benefits are net, so that the benefits outweigh any harms that will come from this as well. And what you're gonna see by the end of my case is that it truly just doesn't happen. So let's look at my first contention, which is that of the harms to teachers. And I said a lot of this cross applies. I mean, it basically almost all does. But harms to teachers. Subpoint A, workload. According to the Education Commission of the States, in the 2010 Digest of Education Statistics report, there was no reduction in work of these teachers receiving the same pay and benefits, so 80% of education expenditure still occurs. So basically, they are doing the same amount of work, except they have to do it in 4 days. So you're overworking your teachers, talking about that burnout. They're doing the same amount of work in less days. But furthermore, subpoint B, decreased retainment. According to the National Council on Teacher Quality from June 2023, after implementing this in West Virginia, teachers were 3% less likely to return to their positions, and also experienced teachers were 5% less likely to return. On top of that, student performance also declined by 0.2 to 0.3 in math and reading, respectively. So we see here is that my opponent gives you one specific study, and I also have another study I'll cross-apply when I actually get to direct refutation. But this is actually not leading to increase in recruitment or increase in retainment. It's actually making it worse. Why is that? Because they have the same amount of work, except now instead of doing it in 5, they're doing it in 4 days. But let's move on to my second contention, which is that of the harms to students. Subpoint A, food insecurity. According to the Food Resource and Action Center from April 2026, roughly 29.4 million children participate in a national school lunch program every single day they go to school. But on top of that, according to Business Insider, 22 million children total rely on this program. So most of these children actually rely on this program. So what we see here is that based on some math, which I can explain if my opponent wants to push on the cross-examination, the affirmative is taking 36 breakfasts and lunches away from 22 million children that rely on this. But furthermore, during the non-school hours, 11 million kids live in food insecure households, and only 16% who need it or actually have access to them. So we already have limited access. We already have children who rely on this. 11 million kids live in these food insecure households. 22 million rely on this in general, and we're taking that food away from them. But my subpoint B, let's look at the educational outcomes, which also cross-applies to my opponent's case. According to the University of Oregon from August 2025, the impact of 4-day school week, what they found is that it decreases math and reading achievement. It increases absences and chronic absences, and decreases 5-year graduation rates across K through 12. So what we see here is that there's actually very poor educational outcomes. But furthermore, also from the National Council on Teacher Quality, a study across 6 of these states also found negative effects on student performance for 3rd through 8th graders, larger negative effects for Hispanic students because a lot of Hispanic students actually are still learning how to speak English, or they speak multiple languages, and they're missing that time they need to get to actually learn it. But furthermore, the harms are more pronounced in suburban areas versus rural districts. Now that makes it really important why I pushed on my opponent cross-examination are these studies from mostly rural areas, and they are. Why does that matter? Because one, I mean, suburban areas are way more populated. I mean, look at New York City, it's got like such a large portion, number one. But number two, most of our students in the suburban areas are gonna be the ones hit the hardest by this. But furthermore, let's look at this subpoint C about increased crime. According to the Policy Analysis and Management Journal from March 2026, there have been significant upticks in juvenile crime with the 4-day school week. Because why? They have a lot more time to not do anything, and a lot of our parents work 5 days a week. So on that 5th day, they don't have school, they don't have anything better to do, so what are they gonna go do? But furthermore, let's look at this specifically. 19.6% increase in all crime, any location, rural or suburban. 18.2% increase in all crime at school, and 26.6% increase in property crime. Let's actually cross-apply that 18.2% increase in all crime at school to my opponent talking about bullying. Okay, so maybe you're not bullied or there's less fights, but crime overall is still increasing at school. But furthermore, according to the Early Childhood Research Quarterly from 2023, the 4-day week also led to increased drug use as students were more bored and less intellectually stimulated. So what we see here is that the harms are actually significant. And the third and final contention is that of the harms to the parents. Parents absorb the cost of this. They don't have the money to pay for daycare. They have to pay for an extra day of daycare, an extra day of food. That's if they even can do that. And the ones that can't, well, their kids are getting into crime and drugs. Let's move into direct refutation of my opponent's case. Their first contention talks about this idea about how only 12 states allow it. Yeah, because it's terrible, because it doesn't work. They only allow it because they have to, not because they want to. When we embrace something, it should be embracing it willingly. But furthermore, talking about the academic achievement, cross-apply this, it's worse for suburban, which is where most of our kids actually live. And these are very specific examples. Let's look at overarching. The bullying went over. Desire, this doesn't really matter if they want it, it matters if it's good or not. And we don't even know if they actually ever lived this. The second contention, the burnout, they give you a lot of things here, but they don't actually directly link them to the 4-day school week having a positive impact on these. I have direct links from multiple different studies, from multiple different sources, showing there's actually a negative. And let's look at that other one I said I would cross-apply here. From the National Center Analysis on Longitudinal Data and Research from February 2026, 178 Missouri school districts since 2010 implemented the 4-day school weeks. It did not improve teacher recruitment, nor did it improve in teacher retainment. So we're looking at this as a whole. We have a lot of really good ideas coming from the affirmative, but not any actual tangible benefits. Thank you.
All right, is everyone ready?
Yes.
Cool, then let's go ahead and begin. It's a great speech, but naturally I have a few questions. Let's talk about these claims on retainment first. So you start off by talking about West Virginia. How many schools in West Virginia did this, and what was the impact specifically? Just give me the numbers again.
Let me find, sorry, I have a lot of stuff here. Okay, West Virginia. So you're talking about the decrease in retainment?
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure how many schools it was looking at, but I can tell you that for Missouri specifically, it was looking at 178 different school districts across.
And so for Missouri specifically, it didn't quantify the impact at all though, right?
It just says it didn't improve either.
Cool. Let's talk about school lunches then. So during COVID, did schools still provide free lunches?
I'm not sure, I was graduated, so.
Okay, sure, fair enough. So in instances where people institute 4-day school weeks, do they still offer free lunches on the 5th day?
I'm not sure, but see, the
Awesome.
thing is that should have been in your first speech if you want to talk about the specifics of it, because there's also research that suggests the impacts of switching depend on how it's implemented. It's implemented different state by state. You didn't have a specific advocacy of that, so we
Sure.
have to look at this holistically. If you wanted to give that, it really should have been in your first speech to meet that at face value prima facie burden.
Sure, that's fine. So let's talk about this idea then of it depends on how you implemented it. Specifically that study you give from Oregon that you cite for a lot of impacts. Isn't the conclusion of that study that it literally depends on how you implement it, and when implemented correctly, it actually does everything the affirmative told you?
So once again, we don't know how often this is implemented correctly, and this study is not about it being implemented poorly, it's just implemented in general.
To be clear though, the study's conclusion is literally to say when you implement this correctly, it is in fact good.
For the University of Oregon study?
Yes.
I don't have that tagged.
Awesome.
If you have that tagged, you're more than welcome to bring it in there. I
Perfect.
don't personally have that, and I didn't say it in my speech.
That's what I need. Thanks. Alrighty. Is everyone ready?
Yes.
Perfect. Then I will go ahead and begin. I've got a lot to cover this speech, judges. I'm going to go in the exact same order they just did, start off on the negative case, work back up to the affirmative, and you'll feel very comfortable voting for me by the end of this. So they first start off by telling you that I have to tell you the uniqueness of today. The teacher shortage is higher than at any point in time it has been in American history. That's the uniqueness of today. That's sufficient. Secondly, they have to tell you that I have to prove net benefits. That was my weighing mechanism, so I'm glad we agree. Then let's look at their first case. They start at first contention. They start by talking about teachers, and they say that workload is still high. That's fine. I have two responses. First, we see massive cost savings, which allows us to give more resources to teachers such that they can do their job. This comes from the National Conference of State Legislatures in 2025, and they find that when you switch to a 4-day school week, the school district saves 2.5% of its overall budget and is then able to reinvest that into the teacher specifically such that they can do a better job. But secondarily, this doesn't engage with the idea at all that the teachers literally report burnout lower by 71%. They don't engage with this at all. Their subpoint B about retainment still being high, they first can't even tell you how many schools in West Virginia did this, and secondly, can't quantify this for you. Why does this matter? Well, when it was implemented in Texas, according to Education Week earlier this year, turnover for teachers across the entirety of the state dropped 2.7%, meaning teacher retainment is going up, not down. They're wrong. Their second contention about school lunches. There's literally no impact to this. Anytime this is implemented, we still offer school lunches, and we have precedent for this. In examples of COVID, we keep the schools open to still give free school lunches, and as explained by a different article from the National Conference of State Legislatures from literally earlier this month, they say, and I quote, schools that operate on a 4-day school week still leave the school open to serve lunch and breakfast. There's literally no impact to this. Their third contention about education, their conclusion of the study they cite is literally the affirmative. This study from Oregon's Hedco Institute in 2026 literally says education and attendance losses are not intrinsic to the 4-day school week, and it depends on how you implement it. School districts aren't stupid, and you have to believe they are in order to buy any of their advocacy. We learn from the mistakes we make and get better over time. The study literally says the affirmative is correct when implemented correctly, and they can't even tell you what the conclusion of it was when asked about it. My first contention about students. They say that my claims are only about suburban school districts. That's not true. I tell you across the entirety of the state of Colorado, both math and reading scores go up, and I'm not hyper-focusing on certain areas like they are. So they're the one who does this, not me. My subpoint B about bullying, they kind of just say, so what? Crime goes up. That depends on it being implemented poorly, because that's from that Oregon study. We know for a fact bullying goes down, though they don't engage with this. My subpoint C, they kind of just say, so what? That people want this. The reason people want this is because they view it as being beneficial for themselves. People don't sit there and say, well, I want my education to get worse than it already is. They completely drop mental health to both students and teachers, and they completely drop the fact that this increases recruitment rates for school districts specifically, all reasons to vote for the affirmation.
All right, I have 5 minutes if all of my judges are ready. All right, okay, and Evan's ready?
Yep.
All right, gonna go ahead and start the 5-minute timer right now. Last time speaking with you all, once again, thank you all so much for being here. It's been a really great round. I'm really excited to get this last speech kicked off. What I'm going to do is go over some of the overarching arguments you heard from my opponent in their last speech, and then move into some voters framed as the big questions for today's round that I think will really summarize everything we've heard. So let's first start at this idea about how schools can open for lunches. How are the kids going to get there, right? If the parents are working, which does not go responded to by my opponents, a lot of parents work 5 days a week. How are the children going to get to the school to get the lunch? A lot of children who are food insecure because they're lower income. How are they going to get their food? This doesn't actually contest. Furthermore, they talk about this once again, this idea about the polls, about 69% of parents wanting it, and 84% of students prefer it, and they say it's because they want it because it's beneficial, but they don't even show you that the people who are taking these studies have ever actually even had a 4-day work week. If you go ask my 12-year-old little brother if he wants to only go to school 4 days, I'm sure they're like, yeah, that sounds great. That doesn't mean he actually knows that it's a good thing. It doesn't even matter. But let's move further down once again, and they give you this new response to my harms to teachers about cost savings. Good news is I actually do have reputation for that. Thank you, CJ, wherever you are. According to the American Association of School Administrators, the money saved is overestimated and it's actually very marginal. So there's not really cost savings. Because once again, the teachers are doing the same amount of work. And if my opponent's talking about the school still being open, then they're really, what are they saving the cost on at that point? But let's move into some voters. And my first voter is going to be that of who wins burdens. The affirmative today has the burden of proof judge, which means that they have to prove to you with confidence that they have met their burdens. And I want to remind you what those burdens exactly are. The uniqueness of right now and the benefits directly linked to the 4-day school week. Now, they give you a lot of problems with teacher shortage and burnout and bullying and everything. But what else they give you is a lot of cherry-picked examples of it working kind of well in some areas, contested with the negation by a lot of other examples of it working terribly in other areas. And another thing that doesn't really, they don't really give you a plan. If this was run as a policy and they had given you a specific plan that actually was implemented and implemented correctly and you were able to vote on that specific plan, fine. But they didn't. They gave you a vague idea of these benefits that can come out of it, but the problem is that just as often, if not more often, as it goes good, it goes bad. How are you supposed to vote on that nuance? You can't vote on that. You have to be sure in your vote for the affirmation. You have to be sure on the benefits outweighing the harms, and you can't in today's round because there's too much nuance, there are too many differences. But let's look furthermore at some of the things that aren't responded to by the affirmation. They don't respond to me telling you that in suburban areas, the harms outweigh every time. The educational negatives are bigger in suburban areas, which is where most of our kids are. They give you a lot of examples from rural areas. Okay, that's not most of the children in the United States. Furthermore, they don't really respond to the idea about how this has a disparity in the effects between Hispanic students and white students, because you learn things through repetition, through being in school. These students already have to learn a second language a lot of the time, and that's from that study from the National Council on Teacher Quality. They completely dropped that. What else do they drop? They drop the increase in crime, and they say that, well, they didn't really drop this. Let's be real. They basically said that their response here is that, well, this is when it's implemented poorly. No, this is when it's implemented ever. You know why? Because under every single implementation of this, you have that extra day off of school to be bored without daycare, without any sort of authority figure watching you. And that's why there's a 19.6% increase in all crime, any location, and also an increase in drug use. What else does the affirmative drop? They drop the harms to parents, about how parents actually absorb the costs here because they have to pay for extra childcare, they have to pay for extra food for their kids. There's a lot of things that don't even go responded to, and unfortunately a lot of them are the biggest harms. So let's look at that second voter today of that, who wins harms? Who wins harms? Realistically, we see the harms from the affirmative are that we have a teacher burnout and we have a teacher shortage. Unfortunately, you see from a lot of the negations case that this does not actually help with recruitment. This definitely does not help with retainment. In some areas, it actually reduces retainment of our experienced teachers. You see that this is hurting our kids. This is depriving our already hungry kids, who some of them, their only way to get food is from school. You're taking that away from them. You see that we're also seeing lower academics in suburban areas, which once again is where most of our children live. You see an increase in crime. You see an increase in drug use. And you see an increase of extra burden on the parents who are already struggling just to feed their kids or get them to school. For all of these reasons, you must vote neg. Thank you.
All right. Is everyone ready? I don't get 4 minutes. That'd be fun though. All right, then I will go ahead and begin. This has been a great round. It's been a really fun round, and Lindsey just gave you a really, really good speech. And you might be sitting there thinking, man, Evan is cooked. I can assure you I'm not, though. What I'm going to do in this speech is I'm going to give you 4 voter issues, or 4 reasons why you can feel very comfortable voting for the affirmative today, and I'm going to cover all of the argumentation that you've heard in this round, so let's go ahead and do this. My first voter issue today is money, 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 make Mr. Krabs happy. What specifically do I mean by this? Both of us get up here and cite the same National Conference of State Legislatures source in terms of how much this costs, or rather, how much money they save. They get up here and say, the cost savings are marginal, but I actually told you specifically that it is 2.5% of the entirety of the school district's budget. If they think that's marginal, that's fine. Here's why it doesn't matter, though. That study literally says this money gets reinvested to create better resources for both teachers and students, such that we see the mental health benefits that I talk about. They never engage with this. They simply hope that you'll believe 2.5% is marginal. It's not. Every single dollar that we save and can reinvest into our students changes educational outcomes, changes the future of this country, and changes the future of the world. Education empowers people when we can invest in our students better and more efficiently. As you do with the affirmative, our educational system gets better. That's a net benefit that they even agree to. My second voter issue today, implementation. They get up here and say, well, he should have provided you the whole 300-page act that he's proposing to Congress on specifically how he's going to implement this and make this happen. No, I don't. That's totally unreasonable for any debate round. Here's what I can tell you, though. Their study talking about the harms they concede is literally saying this is what happens when you implement it poorly. However, there is hope. When done correctly, all of these are addressed. Crime rates go down, attendance rates go up, academic performance goes up, mental health goes up, so on and so forth. And I told you this in my last speech, to which Lindsey said nothing. She doesn't engage with this rhetoric. She doesn't tell you that's not what her study says. In fact, what she tells you is she doesn't know what her study says in cross-examination. It's what the affirmative is telling you. You should vote for me on that. The third voter issue today, mental health. This is true for both students and teachers, and not enough has been said about this in today's round. Students' mental health gets better. They can step foot outside of their classroom without being afraid of getting slugged upside their head. They can focus on their academics. And when we look at this holistically, not just in suburban areas, this is reflected in their academic performance. But a point that is totally dropped by my opponent is that when we analyze this outside of just particular areas, turnover for teachers goes down 2.7% and burnout goes down 71%. They never engage with this rhetoric. It's better for our teachers. The fourth voter issue, academics. When we look at the entirety of the implementation of this, academic performance goes up, not down. Look at this holistically and vote for the affirmative.